I'll destroy you all. Roman Reigns returns to destroy the new Powerhouse duo Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed. Roman Reigns just made a promise that has sent shockwaves through the entire WWE locker room, and what he said about Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed is so brutal, so personal, and so career-threatening that Triple H had to call an emergency meeting with legal just to figure out if they could even air it on television. The tribal chief didn't just return to reclaim his throne, he returned to systematically destroy the two monsters who thought they could fill the power vacuum he left behind. And the way he's planning to do it is so methodical, so calculated, and so psychologically devastating that veteran wrestlers are already calling it the most vicious long-term destruction plan since Triple H buried the entire WCW roster in 2001. But here's what's really going to make your blood boil. Roman Reigns has been watching from the shadows for months, studying every weakness, every insecurity, and every mistake that Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed have made while trying to establish themselves as WWE's new dominant force. And now he's ready to use that information to not just beat them, but to humiliate them so completely that their careers will never recover. What Roman said in that closed-door meeting with Paul Heyman wasn't just trash talk. It was a detailed blueprint for psychological warfare that's going to make what he did to Cody Rhodes look like a friendly handshake. The tribal chief has identified exactly how to break these two supposed monsters, and his plan is so brutal that even Paul Heyman reportedly looked uncomfortable when Roman explained what he was going to do to them. Here's the part that's going to make you lose your mind. Roman Reigns doesn't think Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed are monsters at all. He thinks they're pretenders, wannabes, and corporate-manufactured fake tough guys who have been handed everything he had to fight for. And he's about to prove it in ways that will destroy not just their push, but their confidence, their credibility, and their future in this business. The question that should terrify every WWE fan is this: if Roman Reigns can systematically dismantle two legitimate monsters like this, what does that say about how powerful he really is? And more importantly, what's he going to do to anyone else who thinks they can challenge the head of the table? Let me tell you exactly what Roman Reigns has planned, and why Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed have no idea what's about to hit them. The first phase of Roman's plan started 3 weeks ago when he began making unannounced appearances at WWE Performance Center training sessions. Not as a returning star getting ready for a comeback, as a scout studying his prey. Sources inside the PC report that Roman would sit silently in the back, taking notes while Bron and Bronson worked through their routines, their drills, and their character development sessions. But Roman wasn't watching their strengths. He was cataloging their weaknesses, their insecurities, and the specific ways that WWE trainers were trying to help them improve. Every correction a trainer made, every struggle they had with a particular move, every moment of frustration or uncertainty, Roman was documenting all of it for future use. The most disturbing part of this surveillance was how Roman began studying their personal lives and backgrounds. He researched Bron's family legacy, his relationship with his father Rick Steiner, and the pressure he faces living up to the Steiner name. He investigated Bronson's journey through indie wrestling, his struggles with weight and conditioning, and his desperation to prove he belongs at the main event level. Roman wasn't just preparing to beat them in the ring. He was preparing to destroy them as human beings by weaponizing their deepest fears and insecurities against them. The second phase began when Roman started manipulating their booking without them even knowing it. Through his connections with management and his influence as the company's former top star, Roman began subtly suggesting opponents, stipulations, and storyline directions that would expose Bron and Bronson's weaknesses while positioning them for maximum embarrassment. That beatdown they gave to Cody Rhodes 2 weeks ago? Roman suggested that attack because he knew it would make them look like bullies picking on a smaller opponent rather than legitimate monsters. The way they've been booked in tag team situations? Roman recommended that approach because he knows neither of them has the psychology or experience to carry complex tag team storytelling. Every successful moment Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed have had over the past month has actually been part of Roman's elaborate setup to make their eventual destruction even more devastating. He's been building them up specifically so that when he tears them down, the fall will be catastrophic enough to end their main event aspirations permanently. But the most sinister part of Roman's plan is how he's been turning the locker room against them without them realizing it. Through carefully planted comments and strategic conversations, Roman has been spreading doubt about Bron and Bronson's readiness for their push, their attitude about their opportunities, and their respect for the veterans who built the company they're trying to take over. Here's where Roman's psychological warfare gets truly diabolical, and why what he's planning will haunt Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed for the rest of their careers. Roman has identified that Bron's biggest weakness isn't physical, it's his desperate need to prove he's more than just his father's son. Every interview Bron gives, every match he wrestles, every promo he cuts is shadowed by the Steiner legacy and his fear that he'll never be seen as his own man. Roman knows this, and he's planning to weaponize that insecurity in ways that will destroy Bron's confidence completely. The plan Roman outlined to Paul Heyman involves systematically comparing Bron to his father in ways that highlight everything Bron can't do as well as Rick Steiner did. Roman isn't going to attack the Steiner legacy, he's going to praise it so extensively that Bron will look like a pale imitation by comparison. Every promo Roman cuts will include references to how much better, tougher, and more legitimate Rick Steiner was than his son could ever hope to be. but that's just the setup for the real psychological destruction. Roman's research revealed that Bron has been struggling with living up to family expectations his entire life, and that he chose wrestling partly to prove himself worthy of the Steiner name. Roman is going to use that information to suggest that Bron isn't honoring his family legacy, he's embarrassing it by being a corporate manufactured soft version of what a real Steiner should be. The devastating climax of this psychological attack will come when Roman challenges Bron to prove he's a real Steiner by facing him in the same type of hardcore, no-holds-barred match that made Rick Steiner legendary. Roman knows that Bron doesn't have the hardcore wrestling experience or the legitimate toughness to survive that environment, and when Bron inevitably fails or gets hurt, Roman will have proven his point that this new generation is nothing but pretty boys playing dress-up as monsters. For Bronson Reed, Roman's approach is even more brutal because it targets the one thing that drives everything Bronson does, his need to prove that big men can still be taken seriously in modern wrestling. Roman's research into Bronson's background revealed years of being overlooked, underutilized, and dismissed because of his size and unconventional look. Every opportunity Bronson has fought for has been shadowed by doubts about whether he could move well enough, work long enough, or connect with audiences the way smaller, more athletic wrestlers do. Roman is planning to destroy Bronson by proving that all those doubts were justified. His strategy involves forcing Bronson into situations that expose his limitations, long matches that test his cardio, technical sequences that highlight his mobility issues, and storytelling segments that reveal his lack of natural charisma compared to more experienced performers. But the psychological kill shot Roman has planned for Bronson is truly savage. Roman discovered that Bronson's greatest fear is being seen as a novelty act rather than a legitimate main event player. So Roman's promos are going to consistently refer to Bronson as entertainment rather than competition, a sideshow attraction who's fun to watch but not someone who could ever be taken seriously as a real threat to established stars. The goal is to plant doubt in fans' minds about whether Bronson Reed is actually good at wrestling or just impressive because of his size. Once that doubt exists, every match Bronson has will be viewed through that lens, and any mistake or limitation he shows will reinforce Roman's narrative that he doesn't belong at the top level. Now here's where Roman's plan becomes truly diabolical, and why Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed are walking into a trap they can't possibly escape. Roman isn't planning to destroy them quickly or obviously. His strategy involves a months-long campaign of psychological warfare that will systematically undermine their confidence, their credibility, and their standing in the company. Every interaction he has with them will be designed to plant seeds of doubt and insecurity that will grow over time until they become crippling psychological barriers. The beauty of Roman's approach is that it's subtle enough that management won't realize what's happening until it's too late. Bron and Bronson's performances will gradually decline as their confidence erodes, their promos will become less effective as they become more self-conscious, and their in-ring work will suffer as they start overthinking everything because of the doubts Roman has planted. By the time WWE officials realize that Roman has been systematically destroying their new stars through psychological manipulation, the damage will be irreversible. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed will have been transformed from confident, dominant monsters into insecure, hesitant performers who second-guess every decision and doubt every instinct. But Roman's masterpiece isn't just the individual destruction of two rising stars, it's the message he's sending to the entire locker room about what happens to anyone who tries to replace him. The plan Roman outlined to Paul Heyman includes specific strategies for making examples of Bron and Bronson that will terrify every other wrestler in the company. He wants their destruction to be so complete, so public, and so psychologically devastating that no one else will even consider challenging his position when he decides to reclaim it. Roman's research into locker room dynamics revealed that most of the current roster already feels intimidated by his reputation and accomplishments. By destroying two of the most physically imposing and pushed wrestlers in the company through pure psychological warfare, Roman will establish that physical dominance and corporate support mean nothing compared to his mental superiority and strategic thinking. The most terrifying aspect of Roman's plan is how he intends to use Bron and Bronson's destruction as a recruiting tool for rebuilding his power base. Every wrestler who watches Roman systematically dismantle these supposed monsters will receive a clear message aligned with the tribal chief or risk being next on his list for psychological annihilation. Here's what makes Roman's return strategy so brilliant and so dangerous: he's not coming back as the same character who left. He's returning as someone who has studied his opposition, identified their weaknesses, and developed specific strategies for exploiting those weaknesses in ways that will cause maximum psychological damage. The Roman Reigns who left WWE was dominant but predictable. The Roman Reigns who's returning is a psychological predator who has spent months preparing to hunt the two wrestlers who thought they could fill the void he left behind. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed think they're facing the same Roman Reigns they've seen on television for years. They have no idea they're about to encounter someone who has evolved into something far more dangerous, a strategic mastermind who views wrestling not as athletic competition but as psychological warfare where the goal isn't just to win matches but to destroy opponents will to compete. But here's the question that should keep every WWE fan awake at night: if Roman Reigns can plan and execute this level of psychological destruction against two legitimate physical threats like Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed, what does that mean for everyone else on the roster? The answer is terrifying because Roman's campaign against these two monsters isn't just about reclaiming his position, it's about establishing a new level of dominance that goes beyond anything he achieved during his previous reign as champion. Roman Reigns is returning to prove that physical dominance, athletic ability, and even corporate support mean nothing compared to psychological superiority and strategic intelligence. He's going to use Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed as examples of what happens to anyone who mistakes opportunity for capability and thinks they can replace someone who operates on a completely different level. The destruction of Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed isn't the end goal, it's the opening statement in Roman's campaign to establish himself as not just the top wrestler in WWE, but as someone so psychologically superior to his competition that challenging him becomes unthinkable. Now let me ask you something that's going to determine how you view the next few months of WWE programming. Do you think Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed have any chance of surviving Roman's psychological warfare? Or are they walking into a slaughter they can't possibly prepare for? And here's the more disturbing question: if Roman Reigns can systematically destroy two monsters through pure mental manipulation, what does it say about his potential to control and manipulate the entire WWE roster when he decides it's necessary? Because what we're witnessing isn't just Roman Reigns returning to reclaim his championship, we're watching the evolution of psychological warfare in professional wrestling, and Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed are about to become the first casualties in a campaign that could reshape the entire landscape of WWE. The tribal chief isn't just coming for his throne. He's coming to prove that everyone who thought they could replace him was living in a fantasy, and he's going to wake them up from that fantasy in the most brutal way possible. Tell me in the comments, do you think anyone in WWE is psychologically strong enough to withstand the kind of mental warfare Roman Reigns has planned, or is he about to establish a level of dominance that no one can challenge? And more importantly, are you ready to watch two of WWE's most promising monsters get systematically destroyed by someone who's operating on a completely different level of strategic thinking? Because ready or not, Roman Reigns is about to give everyone a masterclass in why physical dominance means nothing compared to psychological superiority, and Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed are going to be the unfortunate examples he uses to teach that lesson.